What's going on, everybody? It's going to be a different kind of Friday by myself today. Tyler wasn't available. He had a long week, and Amber wasn't available. She's finishing up with some stuff, and I figured I would come on here for a little while I have some time. I got home a little bit late, but there's still a little bit of time, maybe about an hour or so. If anybody's here to free to hang out, thinking about doing some sort of a Q&A. If anybody has anything that they want to talk about, especially things that are related to Cosmic Corner stuff, anything that's symbolism, storytelling, biblical analysis, those sort of things, the regulars. Sound off in the chat if you're here. I see Tatter Bible is here. That's cool. What's up, Jacob? How you doing? This has been a really interesting week. I had not a difficult week at work, but it was an interesting week trying to catch up on some things that are kind of lingering. I have one of those jobs that it gets too easy to forget about little things as they pass by because I work in maintenance. And so my schedule is hardly ever established by what I intend. It's established usually by what happens to go wrong at any given point. So when things break, when things fall, when things crack, when things are broken, or when something new comes in, or there's a large project. What's up, Jalen? I end up having to center my day around moving and changing, and so I've gotten used to this. So thought I'd come in here and have an impromptu time hanging out and maybe talking about some fun stuff. So let me know if you guys are here. If you got any questions or cool topics that you like to talk about or whatever, just throw them in the chat here, and I'd love to hang out with you guys for a little bit. I'm kind of excited. Side note on my own personal life, I get to be starting up and facilitating a Bible study at my home church. Not a church at my home, but the church that I call home, where I go on a regular and serve and attend. I will be facilitating a Bible study for all the men in the church, who I actually have I'm really tend to be, a very, social, outgoing sort of guy. I try to, talk to people and things like that. But I noticed that the men that are at my church, uh, we fellowship a good deal after church on Sunday. But it's very difficult to make special time to get together to fellowship and to pray and to read the word and have those discussions that men really thrive on, because I think it's something that God designed us for. Women have a tendency to discuss people because that's what's the center of their life in a very real way. Men tend to discuss ideas because that it happens to be the center of their life in a very real way. So I think that men who don't get the opportunity to be around other like-minded men who have similar passions or at least similar interests and really just talk it out, it's very difficult for them to not feel like they're withering on the vine, and so I wanted to try to facilitate a way for the men who are in my church, who I enjoy quite a lot, to get together and hang out with each other and have a good excuse to hang out with each other, but not have to go out of their way to try to facilitate that through their work week. So I decided that it would be a really cool thing to do it after church on Sunday, since we're there already, and to do it after church on the first Sunday of the month, because Communion Sunday happens to be the one where most of the guys are already present. So hoping that goes well. If you can remember to pray for me, that would go well and that the Lord would bless it, because I definitely want it to be a blessing to those other men. And I do get to hang out with Amber on Monday, which is going to be super cool. I'm very excited about that. We're going to meet up in my wife's hometown where she grew up. And so she's very excited about that because she gets to go down and walk through memory lane and have the nostalgia trip. And that's going to be really cool. It's going to be a blessing for me too, because I always, I'm a very affectionate person, and I like people. And when I invest time and attention into them, I kind of like, open up the doors of honesty and vulnerability. And I really like people. I do. Like, some people, I like people. And then like you get them around people and they're like, people, they suck. I actually like people a lot. And some of the people that I like a lot, I spend a lot of time and attention getting to know. And Amber has been one of those people over the last 6 months or so. I've gotten the privilege of having quite a lot of conversations and gotten gotten to know her quite a bit, and I really enjoy talking to her. And so it's a privilege, I think, to be able to meet these people that the Lord offers us connection with, even in the online space. To be able to see these people in person is genuinely different. Uh, I'm friends with also obviously with our other co-host Tyler. I got the privilege of meeting him in person in Illinois a couple of years ago, and that was uncanny to say the least. And then I've also gotten the privilege to meet Troy, your chick, one of the guys that has come on to Cosmic Corner very many times and on Faith Unaltered as well. And I got to meet him in person at least twice now, which has been both times very like memorable among 1,000 memories. Let's say it that way. I really Troy is somebody I call a twin as a jest, but really honestly, he's definitely somebody that I have a kindred spirit with, and he is very edifying to my person, very much so. And so I enjoy hanging out with him and the privilege to meet him in person. That was incredible. And so if you guys have online friends and stuff, right, that you know have invested your time and attention and prayer and counsel, and you talk with them when you're down and they talk with you when they need help, or whatever other these things, these relationships that we have online, they're cool, and they're not fake, they're real. But online is a synthetic place, and so meeting people online is not nearly the same as meeting them in real life, for the same reason that it would be different to meet God in an abstraction like theology, and know about God, and even pray and have the experience of knowing God is hearing you, and then even having the experience of his interaction in time and noticing, oh, that's God's fingerprints. That's amazing. Look, he answered my prayer. I can see God. Thank you that you can hear me. That's beautiful. It would be different if Jesus showed up at your front door and shook your hand. It would be real different, wouldn't it? So incarnation makes a big difference, not just to your theology, but also to your friendships, to your relationships. People are in real life. It's a good place to invest your time and attention. But it's also it's a unique blessing to be able to connect those things and be able to see the people that you spend so much time and attention, be able to put put reality on the shape of what you have in your mind, because then you get to actually hug this person, you get to actually look at them in the face, and you hear them, and you hear it's a very different experience. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. I'm kind of rambling because I'm passionate about this, but I'm super excited, if you can't tell. Yeah. Oh, Jamie's here. What's up, Jamie? I see BJ also. What's up? I like people a lot. That's good. Yes, considering I'm a Christian, I should probably have an affinity to like people. It's good. It's helpful. It's a useful taste to have in our field. It's one of the reasons I don't like online church services. No kidding. I don't know how many times I've said to my pastor, as calmly as I can possibly say it, I feel like we're shooting ourselves in the foot with these live streams from the churches, man. I really do, especially after the COVID times, the shutdowns, the isolation. It becomes just too easy to unplug. And I'm telling you right now, as awesome as it is to have Christian friends and family online and to have good influences and watch cool Christian content like this, like and subscribe, by the way, as awesome as that is, it is really not the same. It is not in church fellowship. This is good, but it is not the very good of incarnation. It is not the same as being in church with the people of God, with the capability of having them lay hands on you and pray for you and hug you and greet you and just love you personally where you are in their presence, being in their presence. There's a reason why we want to be in God's presence. There's a reason we want to be in God's presence. We need that sort of thing, and so I agree with you, Jalen. I think it's cutting ourselves off at the knee and wondering why we can no longer sprint. I think the live streams have become a huge hindrance toward people's actual spiritual growth, toward the good counsel they could be getting. It's killing discipleship. It's been a headache. Yes, it's convenient, and I understand that there are exceptions and there are people that are perhaps handicapped that don't have very much access. And that's different. But the normal people, the normal everyday churchgoer that is totally capable of being in church around the family, it would be wonderful if they would remedy their convenience by inconveniencing themselves to come in and be worshipful. You know, at bare minimum, your presence is a sacrifice to whatever it is you could otherwise be doing, and God honors those sacrifices. You know, sacrifice in that sense is a biblical understanding of what it means to be loving. And so if you sacrifice, you know, your Sunday to the Lord and his people, it's not like God's not going to honor that. It's not like you're really impressing anybody, to be honest with you. It's the bare minimum, really. An hour a week is way better than never, obviously. But if your hour a week is still in your pajamas in your living room and you don't ever really get around the people of God and you're still in that isolation, I you're harming all the potential that you have to grow and to learn and to go upward from glory to glory, the way Paul talks about. These are things that the world Paul envisioned, the faith Paul envisioned and spoke about in the scriptures, is not one that inhabits an online space, especially not exclusively in online space. It has to be incarnate, it has to be real, it has to be in person. I think that's crucial. I really do. Not forsaking together these are not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much more as you see the day approaching. Yes, redeem the time. This is another really good point here at the very end of that scripture, is the day is approaching. Understand that our convenience and comfortability is often it's a really easy trap to succumb to, because it's a comfy jail cell that you close yourself. It's really very difficult to come out of sometimes because of the convenience that it is. But it's worthwhile to be part of the church body. It's worthwhile to be around the people of God. And you know, let's stop sinning. It is better. If you ever intend on making that a reality, you will not do it in isolation. 100%, 150,000%. If you are aiming high like the heavens, my friend, it is a communal endeavor. You are not good on your own. It's the first thing God ever said to creation wasn't good, is that man was alone. Don't do it. Don't do it. Trying to run a marathon while sitting down. Yes, exactly. Unless you're in a wheelchair, that would be pretty convenient. Okay, so look, you know what? Here, I'm going to do this because why not? I can, and I'm going to boom. There it is. The link is in the chat. If anybody wants to hop on and hang out with me, I got about 45 minutes or so before my wife gets back from doing some errands and stuff. And there's going to be a bunch of noise and things going on in my kitchen. So if you like to come on and hang out with me and chat about some things, we're having an impromptu kind of fun. I call it a fun Friday. We'll have a fun Friday. Oh, look.
Oops.
Hello, Amber.
Hey, hello. Can you hear me okay?
I can. You're
All
there.
right. Yeah, I'm just waiting for Dave to get done with whatever he's doing at his college reunion stuff so we can head to Nick's house. So I had a little bit of time, so I thought I'd jump on and say
Okay.
hello.
Hello. Your hello is very welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's always fun to be able to do the open mic night kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I really enjoy the interaction. Some of the people that are in the chat are a real hoot.
that's for sure.
That's for sure. You know, I hop on Jamie's channel often enough, which hasn't happened in a minute, by the way. It would be kind of cool if Jamie wanted to like jump on here one time. And then uh Richard's here. What's up, Richard? How you doing? Good to see you. Oh, and here's what's up, Jacob. How you doing, bud?
Hi.
It's a hoot and nanny.
You know, I was thinking about that, what you were talking about with the moving things from the abstract into the actual physical real world, and how much fun and how much nuance that brings to things.
Oh yeah.
Because it's just definitely like I got to meet Nick in person back in November because he'd been friends forever. And I got to meet him in November, and that's been just amazing. And Jamie's been hanging with me at my house for a while now, and that's been a bunch of fun. And it's just been really, it's just so much more fun to see those kinds of things move into an actual, because there's so much more connection. You get to actually see and feel people's energy, and they become real and not as much abstract.
Yeah. No,
How's
I
it go?
agree. I agree. I think it makes a big difference. It's something that we all need too. Like I can't imagine spending the rest of my life never having the opportunity to shake Tyler's hand. Like that would just haunt me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's gonna be fun because I get to next at the end of the month I get to go out and meet Troy and Tyler and Will Hess and Jonathan Pritchett and the whole gang
Oh
on
man. Yeah, that's so
Trinity
wild.
Radio. It's gonna be a nut. I mean, we're planning a big party. It's gonna be fun.
That's the
Yeah,
coolest.
it is. It is. It's gonna be awesome. And just making all those people like real people and not just online people that I love to hang and talk with, but making those like so it's so important and getting into church and Jalen and is absolutely right. Get out of your pajamas and go to church.
Yeah,
That's exactly right.
yeah. Get out of your pajamas and go to church. If you're
How's your
wondering
pajamas
about,
doing, Jacob?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. If you're wondering about my name right now, it's because there's this guy going around declaring that he's the Pope and all this, that, and the other. So if you could just declare yourself the Pope, then I'm gonna go ahead and do it. And
Yeah, I feel like if I was a pope, yeah. Okay, sound out, chat. If I was the pope, what would my pope name be? Give me a pope name, please.
give me a
Bless the
Pope name.
Lord. Bless the Lord with my pope name. Best name wins. I'll totally change my tag for a month. My storyteller tag will go.
I chose Pope Calixtus because the first Pope Calixtus is supposed to have been a modalist, even according to his opponents. And
Wow.
yeah, the first guy that they consider a pope to use the name Calixtus is supposed to have been a modalist, which is an ancient form of oneness. And
Mhm.
and the third Pope Calixtus is the guy that retried Joan of Arc and declared her innocent and named her a saint. That's the third Pope Calixtus. The first Pope Calixtus was a martyr for the faith. He's actually a saint. Um
Interesting.
um anyways, it's just a joke. I'm just having fun. Because we got people out here now declaring that they're popes.
I'm just waiting for the next lady to come along and declare that she's Joan of Arc. I'm surprised the feminists haven't captured that one and tried to hijack that also.
Maybe I'll have to do that next time I do a live stream on my channel and just decide to be Joan of Arc.
You're Joan of Arc.
This is really wonderful. Minister in the spirit of Friar Tuck, so Pope Tuck. That's fun.
Pope
We got
Tuck.
Oh,
Pope Yukon
I was,
Cornelius. Oh my God,
Pope Yukon Cornelius.
that's awesome. I was trying
that's
to
right.
remember. I don't remember the name, the word anymore, and I can't look it up. I'm on my phone, and I will lose. I'll drop out of here if I change tabs. But the Latin word for imagination, that would be my Pope name for you, Pope Imaginus, or whatever the Latin word for imagination is.
Oh man, what's up, Jalen?
Jalen.
What's your vote? What's
Yo,
the
what's
Pope
going
name?
on?
This has turned into quite a party here.
I
Yeah,
guilted
my,
Jalen
my
into
phone's probably
coming
about to die
on.
here, but
Beavis Pope. Oh,
What did
my
he
face,
say?
it's hot in here. It said gold prospecting Beavis Pope.
Pope
I like
Beavis.
Oh,
Jimmy
man.
Two Scoops. That's what it is.
Pope Yukon Cornelius.
No,
That's
you can.
fantastic.
You know what you can be? You can be Pope Nicholas so that you can punch heretics.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Totally.
Nicholas punching Arius. You can also give out presents.
Our women look like they could be related. Jamie, you're accurately speaking right now. I did notice that this morning. I was looking at the picture on my Facebook of my wife and I when we got married, and my wife's profile, and then the picture that you posted of Terry was like, oh, wow. Yeah, they do look like they could be sisters or at least first cousins. It's rather impressive.
Yeah.
What's now I need a cardinal butthead
Cardinal button.
if I'm Pope Beavis.
Well, you got him in the bottom left corner.
Man, so what's up, Jalen? How you doing, bud?
What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm tired, but I'm home and I'm well. I'm overheating because this big bay window next to me in the front of my house is hot
Oh, yeah?
because the sun sits right here. You see that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I do.
It's not even sunset yet. It's like hot afternoon sun right now beating on my single pane windows and making me feel like I'm in a lizard cage.
Sheesh.
So how you guys been? Man,
I'm good, man. I got a bit of a different setup today. I don't know when my phone's gonna. I have a lot of battery. My phone's gonna die here pretty soon. But I was like, I'll stop in really quick and say what's up and at least hang out a little bit.
That's what's up. Yeah.
We get to. Go ahead,
I
Jacob.
always love it anytime I can stop in and say hi to you guys. I need to re-up my membership. My card got changed and I lost that's why my membership disappeared on your channel. I need to re-up it.
Yeah, I was gonna write a letter to the president and find out what atrocities had happened. Oh man. So let's pick a topic. Everybody who's in the chat right now, because there's still some folks out here, shoot us a question. Oh, here we go. That's cool. I'm curious what Amber thought about Pastor Wolfmueller. What did you think about Brian?
I actually really liked him a lot.
Wonderful. I like Brian. He's a good dude. So were you on the episode he had was that Wednesday?
Yeah, I was on there, and actually, it was a good thing I ended up going because Tyler got kicked, and so I had to end up wrapping up that episode.
Oh, okay. Was it he had connection issues?
Yeah, he's having internet issues again. Yeah,
Bummer.
actually, I really liked. Yeah, I liked him. I disagreed with him on a couple of things, but that's part of what not. I think every once in a while, a little bit of I disagree with your nuance is good in conversation.
Oh yeah, totally. Well,
no one is going to agree with everyone 100% of the time unless everyone is a robot of some sort. That's the only way we would.
Or if the person doing the agreeing was that ambiguous.
Yeah.
People that tend not to make opinions are agreeable, not because they agree, but because they fear disagreement.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true too.
I think it's interesting too because Brian is a Lutheran, right?
Mm-hmm.
Technically he's Dr. Wolfmueller. I don't know if they did that as the intro for him, but I remember one of the last times that I got to talk to him on Faith Unaltered. We were talking about sacraments and stuff, And it was right before then that he had actually gotten his doctorate, and so I was able to call him Dr. Wolfmueller. That was pretty cool. So he seemed to enjoy that little bit of acknowledgement. But yeah, he's a sharp dude. I really like him. He's very easy to listen to. He's got a very like listenable voice and cadence. He's very easy but it's interesting because I agree here. Bondage of the Will and Sola Scriptura are kind of difficult. I agree with that. And it's not necessarily the case that Brian is like he's not an apologist with like merely a script. Like he has things that he's thought through and he knows how to articulate them, but he's not somebody that's relying on a script. He's genuinely thoughtful. That's what I think I like about him. It's not just that he's easy to listen to, it's that he genuinely seems to be part of what's happening in the conversation rather than just a talking head with a script. Because I think that's probably one of the most frustrating things about the guys who get the big name in most apologetic squares is that they're not the most qualified to speak. They're just the easiest to hear. And that's annoying.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a good conversation. I mean, it's not online, but there's a local in fact he's just starting his church apparently. There's a local Reformed Presbyterian church pastor, and I had a nice conversation with him the other day.
Is he somebody that you know in person?
Yeah. Well, so on campus there's the Baptist Student Center, and they give out free lunches on Wednesdays.
Oh,
and
okay,
so
cool.
I showed up to eat lunch, and he was kind of there, just hanging out. And I started talking to him, and we actually had a nice conversation.
Gotcha. That's cool.
Yeah. Apparently, Reformed people aren't as mean in person as they are online.
That's I find that to be pretty reliably true. I think that's true. Especially a lot of the ones that are very bold and brash online. If you met them in person, they'd be the first person to buy you lunch and give you a hug. I find that to be really funny too, because they tend to be the kind of people that, you know, they're otherwise likable, and then you get them behind a keyboard and it's like, oh geez, take it away.
That tends to be the case with most people in the online space, though, is that a lot of times we are caricatures of ourselves that we wish we could be in person.
Yeah.
In the internet.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's definitely true.
I try to keep my temper under control in online discussions, but sometimes people annoy me and get the better of me. The other day a guy blocked me because I called him a heretic because he was annoying me.
You called him a heretic for annoying you?
Well, no, he was unnecessarily hair splitting an issue, and I felt like he was hair splitting the issue because he didn't want to admit a different doctrine. And then he kept repeating the same arguments over and over again, and it was starting to become annoying. Even though I had addressed the argument, he kept repeating it instead of addressing my thing. And so finally I'm like, dude, you're just teaching heresy. And he blocked me.
You know what I find helpful in situations that are like that, because in the online space, getting conversations to flow easily and organically without it devolving into mere debate, because a debate is where meaning dies. I'm convinced. Debate might be where like certain things are established or precedent can be set, but ultimately the meaningful portion of your discussion kind of dies on the operating table there, you know. And so it's like, if you want to be able to maintain that, especially without the frustration rising, because that's it. Yeah, it is very, especially when you're trying to maintain, you know, what it is that you're talking about and keep the train of thought moving and stay on topic, and a person gets stuck in kind of a rut where they do repeat themselves. What I find to be the most useful in those times is to rephrase back to the person what they've
Mhm.
said without trying to rephrase it in a way that helps your argument in any way. Just get them to say, yes, you got it. I agree. Yes, you understand. That way, when you say, I disagree, you can fall back on not, oh, well, my argument is better. It's more so, look, we agreed. You told me that I understood what you said, and I said it back to you in my own words, and you agreed. So it's not mere misunderstanding. This is the part I'm isolating. How would you
Yeah.
say this differently? And it
Yeah.
affords that different kind of approach, and it offers that person a lot, not only the freedom to speak, but it also keeps you from being on the offense.
Yeah. Well, see,
Mhm.
the thing is, I've been on this trip of calling out my own lately. So there are people in the oneness community that so the issue in this particular case is that this person doesn't want to confess that Mary is the mother of God. Because this person thinks that mother instantly means origination. And I tried to simply explain that if you deny that title, you're effectively denying that Jesus is God. Whether that's your intention or not, you're denying Jesus is God. I tried to explain that. And this person, and it's not just this person, it's another person, but he hasn't blocked me yet. But these two people, they keep coming on and onto my Facebook and stuff and naysaying me, or anytime I comment to them that actually they're wrong here, they keep naysaying. And I'm like, so the other day he was going at it with me, and I was like, man, you were, because what he tried to say was, oh, Mary is the mother of God incarnate.
Yeah.
Instead of saying Mary is the mother of God, she's the mother of God incarnate. And I was like, man, you're unnecessarily hair splitting.
Well, I think what's funny about that is that the entire intent of the title Theotokos, even emerging, was to establish the deity of Christ, not
yes,
to
Mhm.
establish the deity of Mary. Like,
yes,
that's where people end up getting really screwy, is they think that
yeah,
the transmission of that honor and title goes both ways. It does not. It does not. Just like me being a son of God by way of being unified to the Father in Christ. I'm unified to the Father through the Son. And in so doing, God looks at me and grants me the same thing that he grants Christ. That's what it means to be in Christ. Is that
yeah,
what's true about him is true about you. That means I'm a son of God. Does it mean that I
yeah,
am then God incarnate? No, because it doesn't work both ways. And it would be silly to think so. It's a non-starter, but there's
yeah,
there's a
yeah,
lot about that topic. I remember messaging about this not that long ago, so it's probably the same people, but I there's a lot about this topic that I find to be very difficult to navigate with people that I don't have the affordance of long-term communication
Mhm.
and investment with, because that person needs to know your character and be able to trust you. Otherwise,
Mhm.
the hair splitting will go on. You know what I mean? A
yeah,
lot of the time, doctrinal disputes is like, at first we think that it needs to be a claim to authority or confidence or whatever. But really, what it is it needs to be a claim to trustworthiness and continuity, right? Like, that has to be the thing that wins the day, because I'm not going to convince everybody with one conversation. The people that are convinced with one conversation aren't the kind of people that would have been bothered anyway. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, it's very
yeah,
rare that a person who's entrenched in their view is convinced by anything in one conversation, other than the fact that maybe that guy was screwy and he has something to say, but I don't understand it at all. That's usually the tickle somebody that's really entrenched gets, if anything. They're not going to go, oh, I guess I'm wrong. Like, man, I thought of it, but I hadn't realized that I was so wrong. Like, thank you for telling me how wrong nobody, you're not going to get that. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's very uncommon for somebody to have an experience where they're in the first conversation just knock down, tap out, and be like, okay, I changed their mind. Like, probably not. So if you can
yeah,
invest in the long term, a lot of the time that's going to be invested into the person that isn't the keyboard warrior, because they make it very difficult to keep up the conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Hi, Deborah. Welcome. We're glad you're here. What's the topic? The topic is whatever you'd like to talk about. Do you have any questions for us or topics that you'd like to hear us discuss?
I
That's
have a
the topic.
question for Jalen I have a question for Jalen if he's still around. Actually,
he was here just a moment ago. Now that you mention it, his screen went away. Oh no.
yeah,
Oh, there it
yeah,
is.
his areas. All right, so well, it's kind of for everybody, but I'd like to hear Jalen's answer on this first. So, in this whole conversation of apologetics and effective methods and stuff, Jalen, I think it would be really interesting to have a conversation, and I'd like to hear your thoughts about the different approach of women in apologetics and how that can change the conversation that seems to kind of be gridlocked at the moment.
Okay. So what do you?
Because
Could you elaborate a
women,
little more on that? Like, what do you mean by
women have a
women?
different, women have a different approach to apologetics because we think about theology differently than men do. We just do because we have our brains work differently.
Sure.
And if the just how like the mechanics of is that something that could be a beneficial move in a good direction in apologetics, or is it going to continue to cause contention and tension? Because I can tell you from personal experience, women are not always the most welcome in some of these theological conversations. So I'm just curious to hear your thoughts about that.
Sure. Um, so I do agree with you that women certainly bring a different dynamic to the apologetics arena. One that I personally welcome. But the reason why I welcome it is because I recognize that because just because I think or understand things a certain way doesn't mean that that's the only way to think and understand things. So, so for me, I welcome any and all um, different perspectives of thinking. Obviously, they all need to be evaluated and vetted, and we have to verify that the claims being made jive with truth and are biblically accurate, so on and so forth. But in regards to women in the apologetic space, I do agree with you that there is a very scarce amount of women in the space, but the ones that I've seen in the space, they do a fantastic job. And they add a different flair, a different flavor to the arena because they see things differently, do things differently. I actually think that's what makes men and women valuable to each other from a functionality standpoint, is the fact that we
Hmm.
don't do things the same way. I think that actually helps us be of value to each other in a lot of different ways. Is the fact that I can't find this amongst my own, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so I view that same. I kind of view women in apologetics that same way. Just being able to add a different flair, add a different perspective, add a different angle of interpreting information to the space that is needed. If you ask me, I not only think I think the women are scarce. A scarce voice in the space. I think different ethnicities are a scarce source in the space. I think that
Hmm.
younger age groups, age demographics are scarce in the space as well.
Hmm.
And so but yeah, I openly welcome women in the space in terms of apologetics and giving an answer, because they'll be able to reach different audiences that, quite frankly, men may not be able to reach due to uh, language barriers, due to maybe even perception barriers, or
Hmm.
kind of implicit thought processes about the opposite sex. Um, and so I openly welcome it. And for whatever reason that people look down on it, um, shame on them, if you ask me, because I think you're kind of putting God into a box when you do that, and God doesn't do well in boxes.
That's for sure.
So can I ask you, the question is, should men
Mhm.
and women have differing apologetics approaches? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm asking about like opening up the space to include more women in apologetics because it is a very tough space to be in the first place. And if, like the benefits to doing that, I guess, is more the question. Because we do come at it from sometimes such a different thought process in the way that we get to the same conclusions that sometimes just thinking about things from a different perspective in a different direction to get to the same place can be beneficial.
Okay. So, well, yeah, I can, that much I can agree with. I think that makes sense to say that if we have differing ways of coming to the same conclusion, it
Hmm.
honestly makes the conclusion more reliable. That's how the scientific method works. That's why we have, peer reviewed studies and things like that. Is because what you want to achieve is multiple ways of proving the exact same theory, something like that,
Hmm.
right? And so
Right.
that's kind of, I feel like that's kind of intuitively obvious, right? But at the same time, I
Right.
think that there's another like additional good that comes out of the fact that men and women don't think the same. Like, men and women also don't do the same. And
Uh-huh.
so it's interesting to note that when men do apologetics, again, their central facet of their focus often is ideas rather than
Hmm.
persons, and women are much more focused on persons rather than merely the abstraction of ideas. And
Uh-huh.
so when a woman approaches apologetics, a lot of the time it's because she is relationally invested in how to make practical some of the higher and more lofty things about God and the scripture and the gospel and so forth. Her question is not, what do you mean by that? But what do I do about it? And I think that's just as valuable, if not more, because there's a relational aspect of being able to explain and answer for the hope you have that has
Yeah.
very, very little to do with being able to debate the next person about why they're wrong and you're right. Most of the
Hmm.
time, actually, I think that's an inappropriate reason to think, that's an inappropriate way of conceiving of apologetics, is like defense of the faith by way of logic, reason, and argumentation, rather than to say, I can answer for the hope that I have without needing to argue with you,
Hmm.
and so I feel like women have a tendency to have that sort of attitude toward it, is I can talk to you about these things without needing to make myself your adversary. Like, I don't have to be in contention
Yeah.
with you
Hmm.
And
to bring about the same point.
hey, Josh, and that's also part of the reason why a lot of men, a lot of Christians, get burnt out in the apologetic space. Is because of that very thing right there. The adversarial approach to these conversations, which is
Hmm.
is in direct contradiction to Christianity, because apologetics in Christianity is supposed to be used to evangelize, right?
Hmm.
It is not merely a defense of the faith, just for the sake of defending it, right? It's a defense of the faith for the sake of
Yeah.
of a properly informed perception about who Jesus is, right?
Hmm.
And when you're doing it from the sake of, I'm just going to argue you down for the sake of arguing, um, that's just not going to lend itself to a revelation of who Christ is, but just more of a revelation of the fact that you're a condescending, arrogant jerk, and nobody wants to talk to you anymore.
Yeah.
And I've had several people that have reached out to me in various uh, avenues lately, asking me why their channel isn't appealing to more women, and I've been thinking about that question quite a bit the last month or so, and I think a lot of it has to do with a male dominated space, and Jalen's right on here. It's the approach. Women don't want to sit around and watch cage stage fighting. They don't want to watch confrontational in your face lecturing. We want dialogue and conversation. And
Mhm.
I think that is so much more appealing, that you would have a lot more women in the space if there was more um avenues for that to be the way that some of these conversations have been are taking place, because it's not as many women are into debate, not as many women are into that shout you down and I have to be right kind of approach. We want to sit and we want to dialogue with you about it, so I'm really thinking that it's approach more than anything else.
And
Yeah.
I'll out myself. I'm one of the people that asked her why I'm not getting female engagement. And I don't know though. I don't really do a lot of the shout you down stuff on my channel. But I guess it's just because I do more lecture than dialogue. I don't know.
Well,
Although I
it's
do.
also the nature of the dialogue, because if the dialogue is one side versus another, the
Hmm.
presence of competition and contention is different than, okay, so imagine there's two different kinds of games, right? Playable and non-playable games. And within playable games, you have multiple kinds of games. One of them is competitive games, basketball, hockey, soccer, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Then you have collaborative games where you're doing something completely different than trying to beat the
Hmm.
other person. You're both working at the same thing,
Hmm.
right? And then the achievement is the win, not the victory, right?
Right.
And so men love victory games.
Yeah.
Women love cooperative games. And
Yep.
so the conversation plays the same role, and it ushers for them something that makes the conversation flow in, like, more in accordance with what they actually want anyway, but also it allows them to take the breaths necessary in between and kind of move. This is why women are associated with the water in the ocean. It's the movement of things at their give and take and flow, and it's very peaceful and it has a rhythm to it. And men don't have that. We're very abrupt, and we're very direct, and it doesn't work the same. You know what I mean? And so a lot of the time, and this is something that I feel like facilitates this really well, is actually focusing more so on questions than statements, and allowing for
Hmm.
those things to flow the way that they do. Because I find Amber's way of approaching things very refreshing sometimes, because what she does is ask a question, point out someone specific, and say, I'd like to hear your view on this. And then everyone fosters a conversation in a really unique way. That's something that she can do that a lot of other people don't do. And I think it's because of the way that she's asking the question. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
it's not a yes or no
What?
question. It's not, do you agree with me or not? It's, I'd like to hear your thinking on that, which is
Yeah.
very different. And men
Yeah.
often aren't interested. The thinking for men is the back and forth. For women, the thinking comes with the actual speaking and the listening rather than the hearing and responding. I think
Hmm.
there's a lot in that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably it. I've been thinking too. I'm thinking about growing my channel, and one of the things I've been thinking about doing, other than putting out more series, like I'm starting to work on, is maybe making my channel more like Faith Unaltered, where I have different segments. Um, thing is, thing is getting a software that allows me to have a bunch of seats so that I
Hmm.
can, because StreamYard is kind of expensive. It's
You're
already
right.
a hole in my pocket, and I don't
You're
even have
right.
one. Um,
It's true.
so maybe after the stream, we can talk about maybe some ideas. Um, I don't want to talk about the ideas now in front of everyone, but
Holy smokes. I just had a super loud motorcycle go by my house doing a wheelie. Did you
Yeah,
guys hear that?
I heard that.
oh, and by
Yeah.
the
Oh
way,
man.
Josh, I think your wife was trying to get your attention earlier.
She's really good at that actually. She can get my attention really well. You should see it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Amber, did those things answer your question? Because I feel like that was
Yeah,
really
it did.
thoughtful and I don't want to like brush past it.
No, yeah, it did. I just do it because I've been thinking about this quite a bit, and I also think that when you're able to, one of the other things that I'm really good at is just naturally being organically curious, and actually, like, sincere curiosity really sparks a lot of conversations as well. When you can dig into finding out, why do you think differently than I do? Explain that to me. tell me what you mean by that. Like just trying to get to the understanding the heart and the heart behind what you're trying to say. I think women are better at that too.
Yeah, well, that's because they're more intuitive, right? Like men can infer things really well, but women can see things before they're inferred. Like that's why we think it's a superpower, and men are always mystified that women can understand things, and then we're so obtuse. You know what I mean? And we look at it and we're just like, yeah, I don't get it. And women are wondering why we don't understand hints and why we can't read between the lines and why we don't understand how to read their mind and all these other things. You know what I mean? It's like when a woman comes up and says, do you notice anything different?
Mhm.
Oh my Lord. You know what I
Well,
mean? Like
yeah.
women can notice everything different because they're attuned to that. You
Yeah.
know, like if you want to know if a man notices anything different, see if he can spot the deer on the ridge line or open the hood and say, "Do you see the new turbo?" You know what I mean? Like that's where men notice those things because it's ideas and stuff rather than people. You know what I mean? Like I maybe that's something womanly about me is that I actually like people and I love questions. You know,
you do notice a lot of things.
And I
about
do
me,
notice a lot of
especially when something's
things.
different on me.
That's true.
Like when I'm wearing mascara and when I'm not.
That's because your face is a magnet.
Hi, Emily. I'll see you in a couple of days.
Hi, can't wait to see you.
Yeah, super excited. Honestly,
No,
super excited.
I'm kind of
that's
jealous, but whatever.
that's that's simply the case though. Women are more intuitive and men are more not that women don't have logic, but men lean more heavily into the logic and women lean more heavily into intuition. And so there's strengths and weaknesses to both of those. So with the logic thing, the strength is you can systematize your ideas really well and you can explain your ideas really well. With intuition, you're able to spot an idea before it's explained. You're able to spot something
Yeah.
before it's explained. The problem with both of them, so for logic, the problem is if you don't have a higher principle guiding your reason, you can reason your way into anything.
Mhm.
And we all know examples of this, and I won't go ahead and mention examples, but we can all be thinking about things throughout history or even today where people have reasoned their way into some really abysmal stuff. Um, and then the problem with intuition is that sometimes when you're going simply off intuition, you're more easily deceived because sometimes appearances deceive you. Sometimes the intuitive nature of something is deceptive. And so the thing that women have to do is they have to be careful to to analyze their intuition very carefully and make sure that it lines up as they're processing what they're intuiting or what however you say that word. And then men have to be very careful to make sure that our reason is submitted to a higher principle, that we're not just doing whatever sounds good to us mentally, but we're doing what aligns with our first principles. Um,
Mhm.
that's what that's what men and women have to do differently. Because
I think that, well, ideally, apologetics would be done in pairs with men and women together, balancing each other out in these conversations.
yeah, 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 because
Mhm. And learning from one another. And
Hmm.
picking up on that logic and intuition that Jacob was just explaining, because the reality is everyone needs both.
Hmm.
Um, and you may be born a certain way that helps you to lean in a direction further than the other, but I think that the perfect blend is both of them. Where I have logic that is rooted in the proper guiding principles, i.e., God. Um, but I also have intuition that helps me to give a correct and soft answer, right? A correct and warm response.
yeah,
A a logically true and compassionate answer, right?
Yeah.
That ultimately is what truly points us to Christ in terms of apologetics. But like we said, one without the other, and you'll find yourself missing the entire point of what apologetics is for.
Yeah,
And not only
I
do you
need
need
to
to, oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
I need to be work better on the softness of my. I need to work more clearly on the softness of my answers. I have a very um abrupt style.
Yeah. Well,
And
what you could do also is, and this is a conceptual thing, right? Like you could use words as weapons,
yeah,
or you could use them as tools, and they're interchangeable, right? And it's based on what kind of hand you want to put them in. I can take a hammer and build something, or you can put the hammer in the hands of someone who is prone to violence and tear something down.
Yep.
Right. Sometimes in construction, it's appropriate to tear something down, but it has to be when it's appropriate.
yeah,
You know, it can't be like
yeah,
you can't build on top of something that's swampy, and you can't tear down something that's meant to stand. And so it's a discernment process, which is where this is the fact that logic by itself is self-referential and it can't go anywhere. Intuition is actually the guide stone. That's where it starts. Intuition is what we share from our embodied experiences prior to being able to articulate them, right? And so like that's why women are so expressive in things that don't have words. They use body language and tone and facial expression
hmm
and like emotional insight and things like that, because all of those things are embodied. They're the ground floor of everything that reason is built on. All the reason that we share anyway, right?
Right.
yeah,
um
yeah,
so that's why they're so necessary to one another, is that the women know how to see the ground floor of things, and the women know how to build. It's like that's why men build a house and women build a home. There's the difference.
yeah,
And you can't and once again, the perfect blend is the house being built and then being turned into a home, right? But if we try to focus on one or the other being which one's better, right? Which oftentimes that's where those types of conversations head with men and women, right? Is which one's better. We find ourselves in these pointless, just meaningless conversations that ultimately
yeah.
keep been divided, when in reality we've been better together all along than we are apart.
Yeah, yeah, and I really need to work on the abruptness of my answers, like and control. Well, I don't let my temper fly too often, but it's there. I'm a naturally aggressive person, and naturally aggressive people have a temper. And I'm not a mean person. I don't by aggressive. I don't mean mean. I just approach everything with this aggressive energy, and so I people that are like that do have a temper. We may control it most of the time, but we do have it, and I need to do better at that. Not just call someone a heretic because they annoyed me, and then have them block me over it, and then and then and then the abruptness of my answer. I need to spend more time working on answering it in a way that's relevant to the person that I'm dealing with, and not just abruptly giving this highly systematized answer to stuff. Um,
Yeah. Well, that requires the personal investment that I was talking about earlier, though. Like you have to get to know the person you're talking. One of the things that, and this is something that anybody who's in the chat still, thanks for hanging out and listening to us and all that. If you haven't liked the video, please do so. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do so. But if you're a person who engages in apologetics conversations often, especially in an online space, what we were talking about at the very beginning of this episode was the excitement of taking things from online and getting them in real life, including the friendships and the relationships that exist there personally, because persons are real in real life. The
mhm.
internet is a place that fosters our connection and buffers that lack, because I lack all three of you are not in my living room right now. I lack you in real life, but the internet is like supplementing that lack. It's extending something that I have naturally, which is my presence, right? But it's doing it artificially. The same way that if I put a stick in my hand, it artificially extends my arm. I can do lots of stuff with it, but it still ain't an arm. You know what I mean? The internet is not a real place. And so things that happen in real life are better. You know what I mean? A comment section is not a conversation. It's an abstract version of a conversation. And so there's a lot of times when I tell people comment threads simply aren't going to service us with the kind of nuance and clarity that we want. And so we shouldn't do this. Can I please have your phone number or give you my messenger and we could do a video chat or a phone call. And the first phone call that you have with this person, at least the first half of it, if not all of it, should be, who am I talking to? Do you have a family? What do you do for work? What are your hobbies? Do you love something? What's your favorite color? You have animals. You like animals? You know what I mean? Like, what kind of music do you listen to?
Hey,
you're talking to a person. You know
I was about to say, Josh, you spend that conversation humanizing them.
Exactly.
Right? And that's part of the problem with the comment section, right? Is no one gets humanized in the comment section, right? It's simply a bot opposing my self endorsed answers to, you know, whatever theological conversation we're having. But without people being humanized, you find yourself, you know, being able to just be brass and rough and aggressive, right? Because you don't see it as another person on the other side of the internet, right? You don't see them as you know, I'm a father. Oh, this person's a father too. I'm a husband. This person's a husband too, just like you, right? This person provides for their family, just like you. This person loves the Lord just like you, maybe a little differently perhaps, but they love the Lord just like you. And when you go ahead.
Is that why the Reformed guy I talked to the other day is nicer than the Reformed guys I talked to on the internet?
That is exactly why.
Yeah, that's exactly why.
Yeah.
And I'll even take a page from I learned it from the book Tactics by Greg Koukl. You know, he'll ask a question, you know, when somebody asks him an apologetic question or something like that, he'll ask clarifying questions before he gives the answer. So he'll ask, like, what do you mean by that? Can you explain your thought processes behind why you're asking these questions? Like he'll ask more clarifying and qualifying questions before he answers the question that was asked. And it's something that's really helped me, even in my, you know, apologetic conversations, is giving people the ability to, you know, humanize themselves and express their thoughts around how they came to the question that they have. And it helps to even open the door to other conversations outside of or in relation to the question that they're actually asking. Because a lot of times we forget that you're not really answering a question, you're answering a person. The question is really not what you're answering.
Yeah.
Yeah, most people have thoughts or an agenda behind their questions, and so digging that out to find out what is creating the question in the first place. You're right, Jalen, is so important.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of did it with you, Amber. When you asked the apologetic question with women, I asked you, like, you know, like, what do you mean by that? Can you further explain? Like, what are you getting at? Where are you coming from with this? You know, and it's not trying to, you know, figure out if you're trying to ambush me or anything like that. But it's like, no, like there's a person that formulated this question, and I'm trying to get to the mind and potentially even the heart of the person that's asking the question, and that's what I need to be answering. Is the heart of the person, not the question.
I also find that when dealing with discussions with unbelievers, like, so there's a platform called Clubhouse, which is a purely audio only site, and a lot of people use it. They talk about different things, but a lot of people use it to talk theology. And I was on there the other day, and there was this individual who was an atheist, who I was having a evangelistic dialogue back and forth. And what I find in these dialogues is it's helpful not to bring up the person's immediate personal sin or like what might be an identity issue for them, not to immediately bring that up, but to kind of like walk them through evidences. I mean, yeah, you talk about them like you said, asking them, trying to humanize them, but well, for example, this individual was trans, and I could have made an issue out of their pronouns and killed my evangelism right off the bat.
Yeah.
Not that I lied to them and said I agree with you about your identity, but I could have killed the evangelism by refusing to call this person by the pronouns they wanted. Now, if the issue was about the trans issue, I would have made that clear and I wouldn't have been calling them by the pronouns. But because this was evangelism and I'm trying to lead them to Christ, well, the trans issue is a secondary issue that we deal with after we've led you to Christ. And so I didn't come out and say, oh, I know you want to be called she, but I'm going to call you a he. I didn't come out and do that because that would have killed the conversation.
It kills the potential prospect of getting them to actually give you their ear also.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like the difficulty is that a lot of the time, unfortunately, because the Christian is the only Bible that most unbelievers ever read, you're their taste test. You're the appetizer. And if we are foul in the mouth, they're never going to go and taste and see. It's a huge cripple that we're putting in. And a lot of people are flippant about their apologetics method or about their evangelism method. And it's not, like especially, well, I shouldn't say especially. It seems to be a feature of expecting this kind of monergistic regeneration situation that some people envision because of the system that they affirm, that they think because of that, maybe not explicitly, but at least in their actions and in their tendency to be flippant about it, that they can just talk about God in whatever way they damn well please, and God's going to do something great with it, or they're a reprobate and it wasn't going to make a difference anyway. So my position, my communication, my attitude, my presence, my countenance, my lived testimony, and my witness are rather irrelevant to the mechanism, right? That's a terrible justification. And I'm not saying that people do it on purpose
It's
all the time.
It's a total slap in the face of Scripture too.
Yeah.
I mean, total slap in the face. I mean, Jesus said, plain as day, by this will all men know that you're my disciples, by the love you show one another, right? By the behavior that you show amongst yourselves to the outside world, right? And so, the idea that, how I live, how I speak, and how I conduct myself is irrelevant to my witness. I mean, yikes. I mean, like you said, maybe some people don't do it on purpose, but man, the damage that.
I will say, if you can't put up with a lot of nonsense and people calling you heretics, I would not go on Clubhouse, because there's some
I probably wouldn't. Not that I can't deal with it.
I wouldn't. Well, here's the thing. There are some good rooms on there where people are polite. Like when we go in the oneness rooms, we're polite to each other. We show love for each other. We keep order in the room. But there are other rooms on there where if you go in there, they're cursing at you, they're yelling at you, they're, whatever. And so, that's not godly, and I stay out of those rooms. But you could go on there and you could just hear the wildest things. People will just make stuff up, and they're making it up. And they'll just say whatever. They'll say whatever about the Bible. They do not care. A lot of them, they use Clubhouse as their church. You can tell they don't go to church themselves. They use Clubhouse as their church.
And that is,
and you can tell because you can see their fruit. See, that's the thing. Your witness makes a whole lot of difference, y'all. Like, it really does. Like, it makes a lot of difference to be able to say, this is who I am. No, I don't apologize for it because I'm not sorry. I don't apologize for my person. I'll apologize if I've done wrong to you. But knowing myself, I know the things that I do wrong, and I have an affinity to discipline myself away from the things that are my weaknesses. But if and here's the I talked to my neighbor, my buddy Steven, who's having a conflict among some of his friends about something like this, where a lot of people that he thought he trusted and that he thought they knew him and everything, they're accusing him of something that honestly I'm like, well, that's preposterous. I've known you since you were in 10, like I've known him since I was in like 11th grade and he was in like a freshman in high school, early 2000s, right? Like I've known this person a long time. And if somebody said, oh yeah, he's this way, he's that way, and I heard them talking about and accusing the way that he's being accused, I'd probably laugh at them and wait for the punchline, because there's no way. You know what I mean? And I told him, I don't buy it. I think that's silly. And he was like, well, I wish my friends would think that. I'm like, well, I think that the fact that you're wishing exposes something about what you want from them. They should be your friends by now. How long have you been around these people? He's like, 6-7 years. Like some of them, almost 10 years. Like, yeah, that's probably some people who don't know you,
Yeah.
And there's an old song. If you don't know me by now, you'll never know me.
Yeah.
If you're not paying attention and you haven't gathered by now the character of this person, that's the importance of being able to have a consistent lived countenance and an integrated self, so that when people see you, they don't get the mask or one of several masks, right? They get Josh, they get Jalen, they get Jacob, they get Amber, they get Deborah, they get Richard, like that's the person that you're getting, is the person they are, not the person they're trying to represent out of their own mental image that they want to project, because that's where a lot of people live, especially, unfortunately, in the church. Seriously, like amongst one another, acting like we're in the presence of the people of God and God's watching, and then we try to put on a show. Like if you can't be real with God by being real with God's people, then your prayers also will suffer. Like there's no disconnect, really. All these things are attached to one another irrevocably. And so it's like you need to be able to just be that person. And so this is the greatest antidote for the fear of hypocrisy. Stop being a hypocrite. It's the greatest freedom. This is what Jesus preached about almost more than anything. This hypocrisy.
Stop being a stage actor.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yep.
If anybody who's listening here has interest in this topic specifically, hold on a second. If anybody here has an interest in this topic specifically about integration and presenting oneself in a way that is authentic and things like that, we have 2 episodes on Cosmic Corner playlist that we did before about the Inside Out movies, the first movie and the second movie. And we use that as an opportunity to talk about some of the different facets of human character and the well-integrated self. And from a Christian perspective, not from a psychology ookie bookie kind of perspective. So they're, just being able to explore some of those things. If that's of particular interest of anybody that's listening, check that out on the Cosmic Corner playlist.
I think I was in one of those, actually.
Huh?
I think I was in one of those, actually.
Actually, I think you're right. I think you're right.
No, what I was fixing to say is, so it's one thing, like, okay, so if I'm on Facebook, you get my troll and my funny side, right? I'm being my authentic self wherever I am, but if I'm on Facebook, I want to make you laugh or I want to annoy you. And that's why I am on Facebook. On Twitter, I'm still myself, but I'm much more combative because the people on Twitter are just mean to me. On YouTube and Clubhouse, I'm still being myself, but I'm much more theological and instructional. And so it's one thing to show different aspects of yourself depending on the environment. It's another thing to create a completely fake persona of yourself.
Right. I agree. Well, it's like, okay, so it's like a house, right? If somebody comes to my house all of the people that come to my house can see the front of my house.
Yeah.
Right. If I put a like a fake screen in front of my house to put a display of some other house that wasn't actually my house, the only thing you would need to tear down the facade is literally to go inside.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's all living on the surface. What you're talking about is letting someone in and letting them see the different rooms by their appropriation. A stranger is going to go to my living room, maybe, you know, the person who's a perfect stranger and is simply knocking on the door might just hang out on the porch. You know, like there's different levels and different layers of how you invest your vulnerability to people. But that you can still do that within the framework of being authentic. I'm more so warning against the idea that we need to curate the right poster of ourselves, this kind of cardboard cutout version of me that is more suitable for the environment.
Trying to create an image that everyone sees, like you're your own PR firm, and you're gonna put out you're gonna put out this public representation that's a false representation of who you really are. Versus I'm in this environment where people are combative, and so I'm going to be more combative. I'm still being myself. These are my real thoughts, how I really think. But this is a combative environment, and so you're seeing the combative side of me. Or it's all family here, and so I want to make you laugh. Or I want to troll you because I think it's funny to mess with my friends. Or, we're in instructional sitting and maybe I'm the professor. I don't have my doctorate yet, so that's not happening at this point. But maybe I'm the professor and my job is to teach you. And I'm not being ungenuine when I'm teaching you, but you're not getting everything about me while I'm teaching you. Right? And so there's different aspects of ourselves as we get versus the hypocrisy thing, which is creating this PR firm representation of yourself, and putting that out to the world.
Well, and this what's something that's really cool too is BJ had commented earlier. I purposely try to discuss things in such a way as to not cause division and strife while still seeking truth. I can confirm this. I have been friends with BJ online for some time, and with startling consistency, this guy goes out of his way to foster conversations the best way that he can. And he's been genuine enough to call me on it when he's seen me talking to people and I've become abrupt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of consistency that makes all the difference, because it gives people a piece of something that they can really grab onto. They know what to expect, right? And so when they and this is the thing, people are going to build expectations one way or the other. It's the richest seed bed of disappointment in the whole world. But if people can build an expectation around the real thing, when you're real with them, they won't be disappointed. They'll be refreshed, even if what you're saying is disagreeable to them. They know what to expect from you.
This is a very admirable of BJ as well to be so consistent.
I agree.
Approach to conversation, especially in the online space. So kudos to him, because when I first got started in apologetics, I was not like that. I had to grow where I am now in apologetics, because golly, especially in the online space, these people will drive you up a wall, man.
Yes.
So yeah, kudos to him to have the maturity and to be so consistent in the face of such a terrible, destitute arena like the comment section.
So VJ actually sent in a question earlier that I forgot about, and I just remembered. This is probably something interesting, particularly to Amber, if that's of interest to you, Amber. This is said, why In Isaiah 7, does God tell Ahaz, Ephraim and Aram aren't against you, don't worry. But then suddenly God tells Ahaz, you're screwed. Assyria is going to get you. I thought Isaiah was telling Ahaz, don't worry, Judah will be safe. But then Isaiah tells him he won't be safe. I can think of answers to this. I'm just wondering about it. There you go. That's fostering conversation in action right there. So Amber, what do you have any thoughts on that? I can pull up Isaiah 7. I just
Yeah,
thought
I'm
that was
pulling
really
it up.
interesting.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now just to look at this.
Yes.
Okay. If you want to screen share, I'll pull it up for you.
Old
Oh,
Testament question for Amber. Yes.
Yeah, I can't like screen share because I'm on my cell phone.
Oh,
and
okay. Yeah, no,
my
never mind.
Bible's
You're
on
good.
my because I'm not at home. So let's see. Well, I haven't looked at Isaiah 7 in a hot minute. Let's see.
This is the fun part where we get to the scripture.
Right.
So what translation do you use, by the way, Amber?
I use whatever pops up. I usually look at when I'm studying something in at least 7 versions, and in Hebrew or Greek. So because there's so much nuance to try and to capture what the originals are saying, that I think a good variety of translations is the best way to go if you don't know Hebrew and Greek.
Well, if I were to pull one up, do you have a preference?
I have a preference for the NIV because I grew up in a context of NIV, so everything I have memorized is in NIV.
Okay.
So that's
That'll
the one
work.
I usually function in, but I get a lot of hate for that because people don't like the NIV.
Hate free from me. BJ just decided to join us, by the way, Amber. So if you have any clarifying anything,
Awesome.
he's actually in here. What's up, bud? It's good to see you.
Can y'all hear me well? Is my mic good?
Yeah,
Yeah,
BJ.
yeah, you're good.
Okay. I just figured it might be easier if I was here, if y'all were like, what in the world is your question about? So
Yeah, tell me some more about your question, BJ. And by the way,
Okay.
in the
Hi, Amber.
online space, BJ is one
Yeah.
of my absolute favorites in the online space as well. I adore BJ.
Well, thank you. It's it's God through me and all that. We got to say that. Okay. So I mean, it's true. So I've been reading Isaiah slowly, and then I went back and read chapters 1 through like 7 really fast, just to be like, I wonder what it reads like after having read slowly to about chapter 30 or so. I was like, I wonder what it reads differently now. Well, then I got chapter 7, and I got confused.
Okay.
So it says, Isaiah goes, God says, go to the Launders Road or whatever and talk to Ahaz, take your son and tell him, Ephraim and Assyria, don't worry, they're not going to bother you. By the time your child, knows good from evil or eating curds and whey, Ephraim and Assyria, they're going to be gone. Most people know that general story right there.
Right.
So Ephraim, don't worry, they're going to be gone. So probably within a few years at the most. So it's like, okay, cool. Okay, good. Good. Oh man, that makes me feel better. It should. It should make us, yes, God just confirmed that I'm going to be okay. Then Isaiah says, ask for a sign. Ahaz is like, I'm not going to test God. Then Isaiah gets really angry, it seems. So it says, what? Come on now. We'll give you a sign. The virgin will conceive. Before the two nations, Ephraim and Aram, before they're there, the child is going to eat the stuff. And then in the same paragraph, so he just got done telling him before Ahaz denied getting a sign from the Lord. Before that, Isaiah or God is like, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. Ask a sign. Ahaz denies the sign, getting a sign. Tries to sound pious about it, but obviously it wasn't good motives. Because then Isaiah, tells him, hey, you're going to get a sign anyway. Aram and Ephraim are going to be gone. And get this, Assyria is going to come and kick your butt. And then he goes on in chapter 7 and then 8, and God's like, because they rejected me, he says, the river, the swift, the peaceful waters of Shalom. Well, then, because they rejected me, I'm going to bring on them Assyria, the waters from the river, and I'm going to overflow their banks and stuff. And he talks about how Assyria is going to come in and like mess them up and like. And I was like, whoa, what in the world changed? It seems before Ahaz denied the sign, getting a sign, Isaiah was like, dude, don't worry. Everything's going to be good. You can trust God. Like, peace is coming. Ahaz denies a sign, then all of a sudden, oh, don't worry. Those armies won't be there, but another army will, Assyria. I was like, is there an abrupt change? Am I maybe missing something? Was that there all along? I'm just wondering other people's thoughts because I don't know, it struck me. I get these weird things that strike me in the Bible, and then I ask my wife about them, and she gets all confused. So instead, I'll ask y'all. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot that's going on in here
Oh yeah.
because Ephraim is another name for when you're thinking divided kingdom for north and south. Ephraim is another
Yeah.
name for the north. So
Yeah. The Northern
he's,
Kingdom. Yeah.
he's yeah. So he's talking about the northern kingdom, and if he's talking to Ahaz, who is the king of the south. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's trying to reassure, like, now to the house of David, it was told. And there's some cosmic levels of things that are going on here. So you kind of have to think on multiple levels at the same time. So the house of David is going to continue. The line of Judah is going to continue, even though you're going to see God unleash Assyria on Ephraim, who is the tribe that is epitomized as why Israel, the north, went off the rails, is going to wipe them out, and then they're going to come. It's a warning to you: get your house in order, Judah, so you don't wind up like Ephraim. But even when that happens, the line of Judah and the seat of King David is going to continue because it's going to come through. And this is where it gets really fun and people get really mad because when you talk about, especially verse 14, the Lord himself will give you a sign, and a virgin will conceive and give birth to a son and call him Emmanuel. Now,
Yeah.
this is one of those things where prophecy is descriptive and prescriptive. So there is a description of Isaiah's wife and her giving birth as the young woman, which is what that Hebrew can also be translated as. But there's also an apocalyptic, prophetic, messianic message going on here at the same time. So that's the prescriptive part. So descriptively, we're talking about Isaiah's wife. Prescriptively, we're talking about Jesus and the incarnation. So you've got both things happening at the same time.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question, BJ?
Yeah. That sounds pretty good. Yeah. In chapter 8,
Mm-hmm.
that's good to say there's multiple levels.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
So he could have been thinking about, Assyria could have been there before. In chapter 8, God says, after you denied me, and
Mm-hmm.
instead, so I'm going to bring in Assyria to you. And then he says, because they trusted in Ephraim and Aram, I'm going to send Assyria on them. And I'm like, is he now talking to different people? Because a minute ago, this is in chapter 8. I wish I had it in
Right.
front of me. A minute ago in chapter 7,
Mm-hmm.
they were afraid of Aram and Ephraim. So maybe there's like Isaiah's talking to the king, but then he's talking about the people, because at one point he goes and says all the people, this, that, and the other. I
Well,
thought maybe that might have been an answer too. I don't know.
Well, and
Yeah.
prophetic messages are things that, like, so Isaiah is speaking to King Ahaz, but this is a message that is not just for Ahaz; it is for all
Yeah,
Israel. So it's going to go everywhere. So
exactly.
messages are given to one person, and that person they're given to is responsible for dispersing them everywhere. So the king is supposed to
Hmm.
give this to his messengers to take it across Judah, and and here's another thing that
That makes
confuses people.
sense.
Sometimes, and Isaiah is notorious for doing this. Sometimes Babylon and Assyria are for both referred to as Assyria. So it gets a little confusing because
Oh.
sometimes it's like Assyria did this, but Assyria is going to come do this. But what he's doing is saying, look, the
The
first wave
pattern.
that's Assyria wiped out the north, and Babylon is coming to wipe out the south. And if this is so early
Yeah.
in the book that Babylon isn't the big dog yet. So they're using the big dog, Assyria, to warn for the second coming big dog that's not named until later in the book and in the later
Yeah.
prophets. So it means the same. Its judgment is coming, and both of them are named Assyria because in this point when Isaiah is being written, the big dog on the block that you need to be scared of is Assyria. If they would have said Babylon, they'd have gone, huh? You mean those wimps over there? Like, that's not a big deal. They're like, no, he's going to unleash the dogs of Assyria on you too. And they're like, that's not good. We don't
That
want that.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
did I
Yeah.
answer
And
your question?
that's very helpful. Yes, yes.
it,
The other, what's he gonna say? Yeah, go for it, man.
oh, if I may say
I
something, I it kind of can seem confusing when you're reading prophecy, but if you think of it like a pattern that repeats through history, like history repeats itself, and so things like what Amber says is about received
it's breaking up pretty
through his
bad. I'm
life,
sorry,
but
man. I think it's getting worse. I'm sorry, guy. Oh,
You're breaking up pretty bad. You might try turning your camera off, and sometimes that helps with the buffering.
yeah.
can you hear
A lot
me?
of the time that can help with the signal and get you a less lag. But yeah, your voice is lagging super hard.
What about now?
Yeah, no, it's still lagging hard. Maybe try jumping out and jumping back in real quick.
Yeah.
That might help.
That is very helpful, Amber. So thank you. And actually, that makes sense. In like Sunday school or Bible study sometimes, and I'll mention how confusing the Bible is, and people will be like, "No, it's easy." And I'll say sometimes in the Old Testament they call Judah Jacob and they call Judah
Yep.
Israel, and then they talk about
Yep.
Israel while talking about the northern kingdom, and then they switch to Israel while talking about both kingdoms, and they're like, "Wait, what in the world?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it is confused." So to do the same thing with other nations, I don't see why not. It could have been a
Yep.
common way of
Well, I mean,
That's
think about it this way. So, at the beginning part, when you're dealing with Genesis and Exodus and most of Torah, the big dog or the scary big dog on the block is Egypt. And
yeah.
then once you start moving into, um, and Egypt is a big dog for a long time. Then you start getting into the dividing of the kingdoms and where Israel really goes off the rails. The big dog that topples Egypt is Assyria. And these dudes they scare Egypt, which is impressive. So you've got Assyria that is the massive big dogs. But Assyria, what's happening here too, is Assyria is this big scary dog, but Babylon is also being brought up at the same time because Assyria, when they come down and wipe out the north, they went too far. God brought them in to shake Israel and to wake up Judah and to start bringing on the judgment of removing them from the promised land. But Assyria went further than God intended them to go, wiped everybody out. And so Babylon, who has been being brought up to come in to deal with the south, comes in and wipes out the Assyria at the same time. So there's there's some overlap there and imagery overlap, but then later when you after the prophets, while they're sitting in Babylon in the diaspora trying to figure out what in the heck just happened, why are we here, and what are we going to do about this, that cements in the Hebrew mind the big scary dog that is the evil and judgment and everything wrong with the world becomes Babylon for the rest of the Bible. You'll see that theme, and it repeats over and over, and that's why in the New Testament you hear so many references to Babylon, because they become the final big dog of the Old Testament. But in the progression, there's multiple big dogs that you're dealing with as you're going through the story and following the story. So the names get moved around because of the imagery in their mind. Ultimately, pre-diaspora Hebrews, the scariest thing they can think of is Babylon. So, it's not Egypt anymore. It's not Assyria anymore. It's Babylon. And in their minds, the biggest reason that everything went wrong is the northern tribes. Well, that's Israel up there, not Judah down there. It's Assyria and then like Israel in the north. That's where everything went wrong, and it's all their fault. Not taking any responsibility in the south for their own problems. Like, so there's a lot of imagery that you have to kind of step back and you think, who's the villain in this story? And Babylon becomes the ultimate villain because they were the last big villain in the story in the Old Testament. Like, so you kind of have to follow the picture of the stuff that's going on in the. That's why narrative is so important, to understand the narrative.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Barely. Keep
Yes.
trying.
Barely?
It's still got a little bit
Can
of
you-
lag to it, but we can make it out a little bit better.
Right. Well, before he talks, I have to hop off and go. I got to go get Dave. It's time to go hang out with Nick. So, but I had a blast. This was really fun. And I will catch up with
Absolutely.
y'all again soon.
Hey,
Thanks for hopping on, Amber.
Hey, I'm actually gonna.
Yeah, God bless, Amber.
What'd you say, Jalen?
I said I'm actually gonna hop off too.
Okay, right on, bud. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too, man. Take care. Take care,
God
guys.
bless, Jalen.
See ya.
Right on. Oh, it looks like his connection got dropped. Yeah, I think maybe he's just lagging out. It can be like that, especially on a cell phone. I've noticed that if you're on your cell phone and you're using like the YouTube link to open, if you don't open the link in Chrome, sometimes it really is kind of funky, So it seems like Chrome is what works the best for StreamYard all around, as far as I'm concerned.
Although on Apple it forces you to use
Safari or whatever.
Safari. Yeah, on Apple on an iPhone it forces you to use Safari. Now on my Mac I can use Chrome, but on my iPhone it forces me to use Safari. And I don't know why.
I
Well,
use Firefox. So.
Mozilla Firefox. I haven't heard of that in a long while. Wow. We do have one more question that actually was a super chat. Thank you so much for that, Cosmic Septic. That's really cool, and we don't take that for granted. So thank you for your continual support, because you've been here for some time now. We really appreciate that. Said, thoughts on the "there is no forgiveness without the shedding of blood" bit from Hebrews 9:22. So this will have to be our last question, because I also have to hop pretty soon. But I wanted to get to this for sure, because I want to honor the super chats, but also because it's a really dang good question, And so this is an interesting bit here. Thoughts on "there is no forgiveness without the shedding of blood." Let me actually pull up. I'll pull up Hebrews, because that's going to be the most useful thing, I think, is to actually pull up the text. But in Hebrews, which is my favorite book of the Bible, by the way, because it is the most cosmic corner thing in the Bible, a 10,000-foot view of the entire scripture, just chilling, waiting for you right there in those pages. So let's see. I can hide this real quick. Can you guys see that?
Well, I know what it says, but no, I can't see it from my phone. It's too.
Right, small screen. Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so in here, let's see. Well, let's start at the beginning of the chapter because that's always the best plan. The first covenant had regulations for worship and also an earthly sanctuary. A tabernacle was set up. In its first room were the lampstand and the table with its consecrated bread. This was called the holy place. Behind the second curtain was a room called the most holy place, which had the golden altar of incense and the gold covered ark of the covenant. This ark contained the gold jar of manna, Aaron's staff that had budded, and the stone tablets of the covenant. Above the ark were the cherubim of the glory, overshadowing the atonement cover. But we cannot discuss these things in detail now. When everything had been arranged like this, the priests entered regularly into the outer room to carry on their ministry. But only the high priest entered the inner room, and that only once a year, and never without blood, which he offered for himself and for the sins the people had committed in ignorance. The Holy Spirit was showing by this that the way into the most holy place had not yet been disclosed, as long as the first tabernacle was still functioning. This is an illustration for the present time, indicating that the gifts and sacrifices being offered were not able to clear the conscience of the worshiper. They are only a matter of food and drink and various ceremonial washings, external regulations applying until the time of the new order. But when the Christ came as the high priest of the good things that are now already here, he went through the greater and more perfect tabernacle that is not made with human hands. That is to say, it is not part of this creation. He did not enter by means of the blood of goats and calves, but he entered the most holy place once and for all by his own blood, thus obtaining eternal redemption. The blood of goats and the blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a heifer sprinkled on those who are ceremonially unclean sanctify them so that they are outwardly clean. How much more then will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself unblemished to God, cleanse our conscience from the acts that lead to death, so that we may serve the living God? For this reason, Christ is the mediator of a new covenant, that those who are called may receive the promise of eternal inheritance, now that he has died as a ransom to set them free from the sins committed under the first covenant. In the case of a will, it is necessary to prove the death of the one who made it, because a will is in force only when somebody has died. It never takes effect while the one who made it is still living. This is why even the first covenant was not put into effect without blood. When Moses had proclaimed, so this right here, I think, is actually the answer to the question in some sense. This is why the first covenant was not put into effect without blood. The first covenant was the outwardly clean outward sign, not the obtaining of eternal redemption. But even still, the first covenant still needed to be the attestation of the one who is making the will or the testament, the covenant, right? So this person who is making covenant in the first covenants, technically the first one that is done by blood in the scripture that I can remember is Abraham, and God cut that covenant, right? And so we have a habit and a precedent set from the very beginning of the scripture, even let's say with Cain and Abel, where they were offering their sacrifices, and Abel's sacrifice was respected and Cain's was not. Right. And so we have the precedent set long before implicitly that blood was necessary for sacrifice and for covenant, because a will is only in force until someone dies. This accounts for the second covenant here, because the one who has made the covenant, who is the claim would be the Christ, being God incarnate, has made that covenant. And when he dies, that covenant is in full effect. Christ lives out the law. He establishes the law perfectly, not only through his word in the Old Testament, but through his living and his incarnate life in the New Testament. Then he dies, obtaining the full blessing and stature of the old covenant in its fulfillment. Now we have a new covenant in his blood, right? These are all things that are made explicit from the scripture before we even get to this point, right? So that's why I think this first covenant had to be with blood also. Sorry, I heard somebody saying something. Go ahead.
Oh no, I said yes. I was just agreeing with you.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so he said, "This is the blood of the covenant which God has commanded you to keep. In the same way, he sprinkled. Oh, sorry, I skipped a couple of verses. Hold on. Moses had proclaimed every command of the law to the people. He took the blood of calves together with water, scarlet wool, and branches of hyssop, and sprinkled the scroll and all the people. He said, "This is the blood of the covenant which God has commanded you to keep." So this blood of the covenant covers all of them in a physical, literal sense, covers everything. In the same way, he sprinkled the blood, both the tabernacle and everything he used in its ceremonies. In fact, the law requires that nearly everything be cleansed with blood, and without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. Here's the question stated right here. Without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. What does that mean? I believe it is, in fact, the law requires that nearly everything be cleansed with blood. If we understand blood to be not a first payment of sorts, but instead a divine cleansing agent, a spiritual detergent, so to speak, that is the reason why both covenants are established and kept and honored by the blood, and they're to be kept because of the blood, the first one and the second one. And that is why without the shedding of blood, which I think actually the word shedding here, if I'm not mistaken, has the connotation also of application. So not just the spilling of blood, but again, nearly everything be cleansed with blood by how? To be sprinkled, to be applied. So in essence, without the applying of blood, there is no forgiveness, for that's what the shedding of blood was in fact for. That's how I would answer the question as a walkthrough.
Yeah.
You guys have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, well, see, so let's think about this for a minute. What did the Hebrews think they were doing in their sacrifices? I've covered this on my channel. I know some other people around here have covered this on their channels. The Hebrews thought that all of their sacrifices were either expiation, which means a removal of a defect, a disorder, or an impurity from us, or they thought it was a communal meal. So God can't literally eat the lamb, but if we burn part of the lamb, God can partake of the savor, the smell of it. Or they thought it was a gift or they thought it was a gift they were giving to God. So God has given me this increase or victory in battle or a new child. And so to thank him, I am going to give some of my increase to him as a gift. And so these are the three things they thought they were doing with their sacrifices. And so when it's talking about all things are covered by blood here, or almost all things are covered by blood here, well, it's talking about specifically the sacrifices that are expiation. So it's talking about the removal of the defect or the disorder from either the people, the sanctuary, or the land. And it says almost all things because it's contrasting these sacrifices with the sacrifice of Christ. So the sacrifices of the Old Testament couldn't deal with certain sins. Like there were certain sins, like if you remember, I think isn't it Psalm 51 where David says that the only sacrifices you're looking for are a broken and a contrite heart.
Yeah.
That's Psalm 51, right? Well, why?
Yeah.
Well, because the repentance that he's repenting for in Psalm 51 is murder and adultery. And murder in particular, I'm not sure about adultery, but murder in particular is something that you could not have a sacrifice for. Like you couldn't perform expiation for murder. And so the only thing that could satisfy the blood that he had spilled with Uriah is his repentance and his contrite heart before God. But Jesus comes along and he offers a sacrifice once and for all. And his sacrifice is not the same as the sacrifice of bulls and goats. For unlike the sacrifice of bulls and goats, the sacrifice of the Lamb of God, who takes away the sins of the world, can expiate all sins.
Mm-hmm. And for humanity at large and for the individual.
Yes.
What do you think, BJ?
A thought I've had recently from listening to a Lord of Spirits podcast.
Nice.
Yeah. Blood is sometimes called life. The life is in the blood.
Yeah.
Um, so like, you know, if we take it out, are we taking their life away, and that's why somebody dies, or they don't drink. Now in the New Testament, we drink Christ's blood, but in the Old Testament, I don't think they did. Drink blood. Hey, we'll get life. So you could go weird ways with it, but it didn't seem to be that way. But they covered everything in the blood, all the tabernacle stuff, and that's life. Everything being covered in life. So a symbol, or like you say, a life cleansing agent. Without the shedding of blood, there's no forgiveness of sins. And it seemed that way in the Old Covenant. And then you get the psalm that Jacob spoke of, where a contrite heart is what you want. We have the ultimate sacrifice through Jesus, who is a sacrifice not only for our sins, but the sins of the whole world. So his blood shed covers, the cosmos. So his life covers everything. Without life, we can't be forgiven. Now, I'm kind of just I'm kind of thinking through that on the fly, because I thought about the life motif before,
Yeah.
but it never seemed to make much sense. Because what we tend to do is try to put together the pieces of the Bible like a puzzle, try to fit it all together like in a syllogism, and it often, like Amber was saying, there's one thing can mean multiple things at once,
Yeah.
And so I could see the shedding of blood as the life is in the blood, but it could also mean death, because when you lose your blood, you die.
Right.
So to forgive somebody is a type of dying. You're dying to yourself,
Yes.
and you're giving them life. So to try and think of it from the most abstract point of view, that's kind of like where my mind goes. But that's just kind of thinking of it. As y'all were talking, I was thinking life is in the blood.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. I agree. Lifeblood is one of those things that is a very strange addition. It's not mentioned very many times in scripture. The only time the phrase lifeblood comes up is in the Old Testament, and it only comes up maybe twice, 3 times. It's very rare that you hear anybody talking about lifeblood in the Bible, but it is one of those things that becomes honestly rather important to consider, because of the fact that, like, let's say later on you get something very strange happening, where when you get the inversions that Satan does with anything that God has that is wholesome and good, Satan inverts the thing. And so what do you have with the blood being the life? You almost said it as a jest, but the drinking of blood, right? The drinking of blood is called vampirism. It's actually, technically speaking, poisonous to your body, but also it's poisonous to your spirit, because God forbids it. You will not consume lifeblood. It's in the law, right? And
That's
so
right. Yeah.
it's actually technically illegal in the kingdom, right? But it's very interesting that the central ritual we have for Christianity is the Eucharist, which is in fact to cannibalize and to vampirize the divine, which is very strange to say out loud. But if we understand what's actually happening here, what God is doing is taking these two symbols that Satan has used for evil, and God turns and uses them for good, which is accordance to what he does all the time anyway. It's a redemption pattern. This is what Amber was talking about earlier with patterns, and what Jordan was trying to say. I intuited that what he was trying to talk about is that the fulfillment of prophecy is something that happens in ever larger patterns, or, well, they take the ever larger pattern and zero it down into it's a really small finite point. You can think of it this way. You can see the pattern of what we understand Eden to be in the very beginning of the scripture transitions to being the altars that Abraham builds to demarcate when God was there, and then eventually become the tabernacle in the wilderness where they have their own Eden that they get to carry around with them. That's the presence of God. And it's at the center of the camp. It's in the middle of everything. It's the pillar at the center of the earth. And then later you get this to be even more stationary because they put it in Jerusalem at the city on a hill. It's back on a mountain. It's where Eden belongs, right? Then later it narrows to a point even further because the dispersion of all of the Israelites and the destruction of the temple up until Herod's temple, they didn't have one. Herod's temple is a restructuring of the same thing. And then eventually you have the ultimate and highest resolution fulfillment of the pattern when Christ standing on its doorstep says, the temple is here. Something greater than the temple has arrived. If you destroy this temple in 3 days, I will rebuild it.
Yeah.
That's the culmination of the pattern as it spirals inward, right? And what happens in prophecy often is because it's written in a way that reflects events and happenings, but it uses thick symbolic textures to do it. A lot of, and this is something that I want to emphasize as much as possible because of Cosmic Corner, symbolism is a language that is built on context. You need context for symbols to have the meaning they have, right? So blood is life because it is in the temple. Blood on the ground calls out to God as vengeance when it's from Abel. So blood is both. It's not one or the other. It is both. Naturally speaking, symbolically speaking, it is both. And what the meaning is determined by is its juxtaposition and relationship to the context that it's used. That's how symbolism works. It's a contextual language, but it behaves much like a language, which is why it's reliable. But it's not straightforward. That's what makes it very difficult and cryptic and riddle-like. That's why Proverbs talks about the riddles of wise men and being discerning and understanding and things like that. It's not straightforward, or you wouldn't need some specialty to understand them. You know what I mean? Like, you really wouldn't. And yet they're the most intuitive thing in the world when you zoom back out and look at where it lives. You know what I mean? And so, like, the shedding of blood in relation to a covenants that are established and enforced by the one who dies. All of the context surrounding that, saying the shedding of blood is the forgiveness of sins, calls back all the way back to Deuteronomy and Leviticus and even the Exodus with the Passover and the shedding of blood being the staving of death. Right? All of these things, there's the central focus of blood being a means of death and life is continuity from the very beginning, all the way through. It's the same thing as water being life and death. It's cleansing and it's the flood. It's baptism and it's the Red Sea. The Israelites live through it. The world dies in it.
You know what you remind me
of? Water is.
You know what you remind me of?
The Lord.
You remind me of Melito of Sardis's sermon on Pascha, on the Passover. Have you read that?
I have not.
Have you read the introduction?
I have not.
Go look up Melito of Sardis on Pascha.
Huh. I'll have to
look
check
it
that
up.
out.
He is what he's talking about. I'll just tell you what he's talking about in the introduction. He's talking about the symbolism of Passover and how Passover is fulfilled in Christ. And so he's talking about this double symbolism that's in Christ, where you have the lamb in the Old Testament, and that lamb is a symbol of Christ in the New Testament, and he just goes back and forth with this symbolism, and it's beautiful. And if I thought I could go to it without messing up my screen because I'm in my browser right now, I would pull it up and read it to you. But it's very beautiful. You should go look it up. It's I in fact I can send it to you. It's Melito of Sardis on Pascha.
Send me a link. Send me a link for sure. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. The way you talk about symbolism sounds like the way Melito talks about symbolism.
I'll take it.
But anyways, no, what I was gonna say, so I want to say two more things on this subject. So one, so Jesus is called the Lamb, and that's specifically a reference to Passover. And if you know the way Passover works, so the event itself is expiation, because you're removing the death angel from off of the people. And so the event itself is expiation. But the commemoration of the event, which the Jews do every year, is a communal meal. It's a communal meal that they share with God by burning part of the lamb. And so if you examine this, then the event of Christ's crucifixion itself is expiation. And communion, the Eucharist, which we share with each other as often as we can, my church does it every Sunday. When you do Eucharist, that's a communal meal. And the way I think about this is the same way that the Hebrews thought they were sharing the meal with God through burning of the altar. I think Jesus is in the room with you, eating that meal with you. It's a communal meal. You're sharing a meal with Jesus. You're coming to the table. But then the other thing I was gonna say, is that so you know Paul Vonderty, and Paul Vonderty has this theory, and I think he's correct that some of the sacrifices were iconoclastic. And in particular, Passover is iconoclasm against the Egyptian god of life, Khnum, because lambs, or at least rams, are his symbol. And so you're sacrificing the symbol of Khnum on the altar. Jesus is called the Lamb of God. And his sacrifice is also iconoclastic. His sacrifice is iconoclasm against the icon of self. And so you're sacrificing your self-worship on the altar when you identify yourself with the death of Christ. And then you receive God's icon in you by receiving Jesus.
I like that. That's very interesting. That you would be, yeah. I think I agree with that. I'd have to think about it a lot more, obviously. It's an interesting way of phrasing it, though. I like that. I like that. Yeah, this is cool. Sean, in the chat here, I'd like to talk to you and Tyler. Haven't heard back yet. Tyler has the helm on the Faith Unaltered Gmail, and usually will forward me things that have my name attached to them specifically. So if you want to, you can send us an email if you haven't yet. If you have already, do it again, because sometimes these things get buried. But send us an email at faithandaltered@gmail.com and let me know what you want to discuss. Put my name in the subject title or whatever. And Tyler will forward that to me in my own personal email, and we can set up a time to video chat or whatever and talk about whatever you have in mind. That's totally fine with me. Thanks again, Cosmic Septic, for the awesome question, because that was a very fruitful discussion. I feel like as a closeout for an open mic. That was really fun. Thanks for BJ and for Amber and for Jalen and for Jordan, who tried to come on. Hopefully Jordan will be able to come back for another episode, because I've been trying to get that guy on Cosmic Corner for a couple of months now. He's been listening to Cosmic Corner for some time as well. So thanks to everybody who came on. Thanks to everybody who's listening. And it was in the chat. Anybody that's listening afterward, thank you that you're here. The Lord bless you and keep you. We're happy to have you. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks, Jacob, for hopping on and coming and talking with me and stuff. You were the first one in the chat and the last one to leave, so you win. But yeah, this has been really fun, and I feel refreshed and edified. My body is tired, and it's cooling down in my house, so I'm a little more refreshed physically as well. But this was a really good conversation, and I am personally edified, so I appreciate it. Yeah, good night. Have a good night. Yep. Awesome. Yeah, please send me the email, and I'll definitely get back to you as soon as I get it back from Tyler. Let me know what's up. So the next Cosmic Corner coming down the pipes is going to be on the 16th, I believe. 16th. Third Friday is the 16th, and we're going to be discussing what is death, what does it do, why are you afraid of it, and why you shouldn't be. So if that strikes you and that sounds interesting to you, come and check that out on the 16th. That's going to be a really good discussion. We're going to explore some interesting high level abstractions and symbols for that one. So if that's your speed, if that's your train, come and hop on and join us for that one. Don't know what Tyler has planned for next week, but be on the lookout for the next Friday at 7 Eastern. We're going to be streaming something next week, probably Tyler. Yes, death is just a hook behind the door where I'll leave my dirty clothes. Man, absolutely. That's exactly right. You know what? This is really fun. With that being said, I guess we'll hop off. I'll say it. Good night. God bless. Stay like Christ.